Every day she walked into class, and every day they made her wish she hadn't. They laughed at the way she dressed. They whispered about the smell of her lunch. Her name wasn't written on any invitation. No seat was ever saved for her. And in the cafeteria, she was always the last to be served and the first to be humiliated. To them, she was invisible when they didn't need someone to tear her down. And when they did, she was their favorite target. But one day, something changed. That morning started like any other, until the classroom door creaked open. A new girl stepped in. At first glance, it seemed like a stranger, but the moment her face turned to the light, gasps echoed around the room. It was her. The same eyes, the same bone structure, the same face. Only this girl didn't shrink. She didn't flinch. She didn't cower. She stood tall. Who was this girl? Why did she look exactly like the one they had bullied for years? And why did her eyes look like they'd seen everything and forgiven nothing? They had mocked the quiet one. They had broken her shoes, spread rumors, and laughed when she cried. But what if the girl they bullied was never truly alone? What if she had a twin? And what if that twin had spent years in silence, learning the names, the faces, the lies, and preparing for the day she would return? This isn't just a story about high school cruelty. It's about a secret hidden in plain sight. A sister lost to time, a broken girl, no one protected, and a family empire on the verge of collapse, all because of what they did to one girl with nothing, who turned out to be everything. The truth won't just shock you. It will flip every assumption on its head, because by the end of this story, you'll realize they were never ready for the girl who came back. But to understand how everything began, we need to go back to where it hurt most: the school cafeteria, the school outcast inn. The cafeteria of Westbridge High. Lunchtime wasn't a break. It was a battleground. Suyi sat alone, just as she always had. Her table was near the windows, far from the noise, and even farther from the crowd. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. And somehow, that made them hate her more. The lunch tray in front of her held nothing special: some spaghetti, a bruised apple, and a carton of milk that had expired 2 days earlier. But before she could take a single bite, a loud laugh cracked through the room. A hand reached across the table, and with one swift motion, the spaghetti was airborne. It splattered across her lap. The girl who flipped the tray, Tiffany, grinned, like she had just scored a goal. Her friends laughed behind her. Lana folded her arms, smug as ever. Another girl pulled out her phone, filming. "Oops," Tiffany sneered. "Maybe if your family could afford actual clothes, we wouldn't be doing the laundry for you." The room laughed. Suyi didn't. She picked up the tray, wiped the sauce off her sleeves, and sat back down. Not a single word. Not even a glance at the girl who humiliated her. That made them angrier. Because when you don't fight back, bullies feel powerless. Rumors followed Suyi like a curse. Some whispered that her mother worked at a nightclub. Others said her father had disappeared after a gambling debt turned violent. No one ever bothered to find out the truth, and she never corrected them. She walked through the halls like a ghost, bruised but unbroken. Locker doors slammed near her ears. Her name was scribbled on bathroom walls, always paired with the ugliest lies. And when group projects came up in class, her name was conveniently left off every list. No one sat with her. No one invited her. No one helped her when her books were kicked down the stairs. But still, she said nothing. Not because she had nothing to say, but because she had nowhere safe to say it. Her voice, if she used it, might crack. And cracks, in a place like this, only invite more cruelty. Some teachers noticed, but chose not to get involved. Others blamed her. "You need to socialize more," they'd say. "Maybe if you smiled once in a while." But Suyi knew what they didn't. She had nothing to prove to these people. No one to impress. and no reason to fight for their approval. Because every night, when the world turned quiet, she opened a small notebook under her pillow and wrote down everything. Names, dates, what they said, what they did. She remembered. She recorded. She waited, and the truth is, she didn't need anyone to save her. She was just waiting for someone to arrive. Someone who hadn't been seen in years. Someone they thought was gone forever. And while she endured the pain in silence, the torment didn't stop at school. The broken workplace. If school had been cruel, the workplace was carnivorous. Su Yi had graduated from being an invisible outcast to something worse. An object to be used, ignored, or replaced. At Jiayuan Media, a glossy corporation that prided itself on its progressive values, she was just another name on the schedule. But to some, she was more than that. She was a stepping stone. Manager Ma made no effort to hide his contempt. He belittled her in meetings, dumped grunt work on her desk, and when things went wrong, pointed fingers in her direction with chilling ease. "You really think we promote people here based on talent?" he once whispered while handing her another last-minute assignment. "No, Su Yi. We promote the ones who know how to listen." That week, she was demoted from team lead to flyer distributor, a punishment disguised as a learning opportunity. Worse still was Mr. Zhu, a bloated executive with predatory eyes and a permanent glass of wine in his hand. He smiled too much, touched too freely. And when Su Yi was assigned to accompany him to a dinner meeting, she knew it wasn't about business. She protested. Manager Ma smirked. "Don't act like you don't know the rules," he said. "Women like you don't get chances like this unless they know how to use what they've got." That night, the restaurant glowed with gold chandeliers and hollow laughter. Su Yi wore a simple black dress, the only formal outfit she owned. Mr. Zhu, drunk before appetizers, leaned in too close. "Drink with me," he slurred. "Apologize for your attitude. Maybe then I'll consider signing." She tried to excuse herself, saying she needed the restroom. He grabbed her wrist. "You think you're too good for this job? You'll beg for it back." She broke away and ran. The hallway felt endless. The doors blurred. Her pulse roared in her ears. She found the rooftop. Cold wind slapped her face as she pushed the door open and gasped for air. Behind her, footsteps. "Don't run," Mr. Zhu called. "No one will believe you anyway." Su Yi turned to face him. "No more." "What did you say?" She stepped back. Her heel hit the ledge. For a moment, the wind seemed to hold her there. And then, screams. Glass shattered. Someone shouted her name. From the ground below, sirens wailed, into the night. The next morning, the office buzzed with half-truths and sharpened sympathy. "They said she jumped." "No, someone pushed her." "Wasn't she the girl who got that dinner contract? Didn't she have some history?" Manager Ma acted shocked. Mr. Zhu was silent. The official report? A suicide attempt. But something didn't make sense. There was no suicide note, no warning. And nobody in the hospital registry has her name. For 3 days, no one knew where Su Yi had gone. For 3 days, silence blanketed the building. And then, on the 4th morning, the elevator doors opened. Someone walked in. Same height, same face. But the eyes? The eyes were different. Cold, sharp, unafraid. This was not the Su Yi they remembered. Days passed. Whispers rose. But then, someone walked into the office. Same face, different fire in her eyes. The twin returns. When she first stepped off the elevator, no one noticed. She looked exactly like the girl they thought they'd broken. The one who'd fallen, disappeared, been labeled unstable and discarded like company waste. But this wasn't Su Yi. This was Wan Di. And she wasn't here for paperwork. She walked the same halls her sister walked, saw the same faces that mocked her, passed the same desks where whispered gossip once cut like razors. But Wan Di didn't lower her head. She didn't keep her voice small. She didn't flinch. She met every stare and made it linger. Every smirk, she erased with a glance. Manager Ma saw her that morning in the break room. She didn't speak. She simply sipped her tea and stared at him until the cup was empty. He cleared his throat, mumbled something about a meeting, and left. Fast, Mr. Zhu was worse. He saw her reflection in the glass wall outside his office. The moment he turned around and saw her standing there, he dropped his cigar. He laughed nervously. "You're back? Already?" She didn't answer. He stepped closer. "Look, that night maybe I misread things. You know how drinks can make things blurry. I'm a reasonable man." She didn't blink. "Are you?" "Of course." "Look, no need to dwell on the past. You're valuable to us." "Good," she said. "Then you won't mind if I check the rooftop cameras? I'd like to file a harassment report, just for my records." Mr. Zhu froze. "You wouldn't do that." Her voice was calm. "Try me." That afternoon, Manager Ma called IT twice. By evening, all rooftop footage from the night of the dinner was accidentally wiped from the system, but Wandi already knew it would be. That was the test. She didn't need the footage. She needed their reactions. In every meeting, she spoke with clarity and command. She pitched new ideas, signed deals her sister had started, and looked Mr. Zhu straight in the eye when she said, "I'll take over negotiations. I prefer handling predators directly." No one dared argue, and the more ground she gained, the more the company noticed. Clients respected her. Colleagues grew curious. Some whispered, "She's changed." Others weren't sure it was her at all. They were half right. Wandi moved through the building like a storm that had studied the weather patterns and now controlled the wind. She didn't need validation. She needed justice. And every time someone asked where Su Yi had gone, she smiled and said, "She's handling things in the background. She always has." In the shadows, she reached out to old contacts, tracked the lies stitched around her sister's name, and slowly, methodically, pulled at each thread. Mr. Zhu's cover-ups, Manager Ma's side deals, the slander, the threats, the contracts forged with coercion. She gathered it all and waited. Because revenge taken in silence is personal. But revenge taken in public? That's legacy. And there was one perfect place to begin it. The class reunion. The class reunion setup. The invitations were sent weeks in advance. Du Yuqing made sure of it. Every former student of Westbridge High who ever mattered was on the list. The venue? The most prestigious hotel in the city is Dihao Grand. The goal? Simple. To watch Su Yi humiliated in front of everyone she once knew. It wasn't just pettiness. It was planned. Yu Qing had climbed far since graduation. Married rich. Learned the art of smiling with her lips and striking with her tongue. Now she wanted to make it clear. The girl they used to mock had only gotten worse. And when Yu Qing sent that invitation to Su Yi, she was expecting a ghost to show up. Someone plain, someone easy to break. Instead, the doors opened and silence followed. Wandi walked in. Her hair was perfectly swept back, her steps confident, her eyes unreadable. She wore a tailored black gown with a subtle emerald pendant resting above her collarbone. No one laughed. No one dared. Yu Qing narrowed her eyes. "You really showed up?" Wandi tilted her head. "Of course. I never miss a good story." The room filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and backhanded compliments. Yu Qing clung to her clique like armor. "She's here to sponge a free meal," someone whispered. "Can't even afford a dress like that." Yu Qing raised her glass. "Everyone, please welcome our old classmate Su Yi." Still as modest as ever, Wandi smiled. "And you're still pretending you married well?" A flicker of discomfort crossed Yu Qing's face. The dinner began. Small talk turned sharp. The wine flowed. And just when the laughter peaked, a server approached Yu Qing with a velvet box. "From the owner of the Dihao Hotel," he said. "A gift for tonight's host." She opened it. Gasps swept across the table. Inside was the Empress necklace, an antique masterpiece rumored to be worth over 100 million yuan. A piece never shown in public. Until now, Yu Qing's mouth parted, but she said nothing. Someone else spoke first. "Wait. Isn't that the same necklace President Nanfeng recently acquired?" Everyone turned to look at Wan Di. The server cleared his throat. "Apologies. This gift was meant for Miss Su Yi, not Mrs. Zhu." A beat of silence. Yu Qing stood. "There must be a mistake. My husband arranged—" A deeper voice interrupted from the far end of the room. "There is no mistake." All eyes shifted to the man entering the room. Tall, composed, unmistakably powerful. Nanfeng Jin, CEO of Nanfeng Group, billionaire, and apparently an ally. He walked past Yu Qing without a glance, stopping only in front of Wan Di. "I told you I'd send something memorable." She nodded once. "You always do." Yu Qing's face drained of color. "You know him?" Someone whispered. "She's not just here for dinner," another murmured. "She owns the table." Yu Qing's voice cracked. "You're faking it. He doesn't know you. Your father was a gambler. You sold yourself to pay his debts." Wan Di turned to face her. "My father was forced to abandon me. My sister was sold. I was stolen. But I didn't break. And now, the ones who did the breaking, they're the ones crumbling." She looked down at the necklace. "And for the record, this gift wasn't a bribe. It was an apology." Yu Qing snapped. "You want to act like you belong here? Fine. Tell everyone the truth. Tell them who you really are." "I already have," Wan Di said, her voice cool. "I'm Su Yi, and I remember everything." The room fell into stunned silence. Waiters froze. Guests exchanged looks. No one knew what to say, and that's when Yu Qing lost control. She reached for the necklace. "Then you don't deserve this." Wan Di stepped back, just enough for Yu Qing to stumble forward. Her heel twisted. She hit the floor hard. The necklace never left its box. Gasps echoed again. But this time, no one helped her up. Not even her husband. Because power wasn't about who had money, or who married well. It was about who survived, and Su Yi, or the woman they thought was Su Yi, had survived more than they could imagine. The evening ended with Yu Qing storming out, humiliated. The whispers began before she reached the door, but Wan Di didn't watch her leave. She just sat down, sipped her wine, and leaned into the quiet. That should have been the end of it, but there was still one enemy left, and one secret left, unrevealed. Family, forgotten and found. Long before there were ballrooms and billionaires, there was a one-room apartment on the edge of the city, and a girl who grew up without knowing who she really was. That was where Wan Di went next. The neighborhood had changed. Old brick walls had been painted over with hollow slogans. The air reeked of damp clothes and rusted metal. But the apartment hadn't changed. Not the way it smelled. Not the cracked floor tiles. Not the woman who opened the door. Ding Xiumei, Su Yi's foster mother, looked startled at first. And then she softened. "Yi," she said, using the name she'd always known. "You're back." Wan Di didn't correct her. "I just wanted to visit," she said. "It's been a long time." Inside, the air was thick with dust and tired memories. A frail boy sat curled, up in a corner humming softly, his hands tied loosely to a bedpost. "That's Tao Tao," Ding said quietly. "Your brother. He doesn't talk much. Not anymore." Wan Di knelt beside him. His eyes darted toward her, then away again. "Why is he tied up?" she asked, though she already knew. Ding Xiumei's voice trembled. "To protect him. From his father." The truth spilled out slowly. Years ago, Su Yi had been sold off by her stepfather, Su Jiangguo, to pay off gambling debts. She was passed around, used, and eventually dumped in the system. Ding Xiumei, the one person who had tried to protect her, was beaten nearly to death for interfering. When Tao Tao was born, the abuse continued, only worse. Su Jiangguo had become a local thug. He ruled their home with fists and blackmail. Ding Xiumei's body bore the proof. Scars hidden under long sleeves, bruises that never quite faded. Wan Di sat there taking it all in. She had thought the worst thing Su Yi endured was the cruelty of classmates and co-workers. She had no idea. "You don't have to live like this anymore," Wan Di said. "None of you." Ding Xiumei shook her head. "He'll never let us go." "I will." That night, Wan Di moved them into a rented flat under a fake name. She paid for Tao Tao's medical checkup. She bought new clothes for Ding Xiumei. She promised she'd fix everything, and she meant it. But justice, real justice, requires more than good intentions. It requires confrontation. Across town, in a nightclub lit by red lights and false laughter, Su Jiangguo was drinking and bragging about how he used to control women, about how easy it was to sell a girl no one would miss. He didn't know someone was listening. Wan Di had eyes everywhere now. Her enemies weren't just in boardrooms and classrooms. They were in back alleys, in forgotten apartments, in places people stopped looking at a long time ago. She hadn't planned to confront Su Jiangguo just yet, but someone else had different ideas. Across the city, Du Yuqing was still reeling from her public humiliation. Losing face at the reunion was bad enough, but learning that Su Yi was powerful and dangerous was worse. She couldn't afford another scandal, so she planned one. A trap. It began with a text, sent from a private number, laced with venom. "Meet me at the back of the mountain behind the Yai school. Come alone, or everyone sees the video." The video. Wan Di knew what it was. Footage doctored from years ago. A moment of vulnerability turned into a weapon. She didn't hesitate. She didn't tell anyone, because this wasn't about power anymore. It was personal. That trap? A phone call, a challenge, a mountain behind the school. And Wan Di walked into it alone. The back mountain ambush. The wind was sharp that night, cold enough to bite. Clouds hung low over the city, and the back mountain behind the old school was silent. Too silent. Wan Di stepped into the clearing with her coat buttoned high and her hands in her pockets. Her phone was off. No cameras, no backup. Just her. Exactly what they wanted. Du Yuqing stood near the crumbling wall, flanked by 3 men. Faces Wan Di vaguely remembered from high school. Boys who'd followed orders and laughed at cruelty. Now grown, but not changed. "Didn't expect you to actually come," Yuqing said, arms folded, voice sweetened with spite. "I came to end this," Wan Di replied. Yuqing pulled out her phone. "One button, and this goes to every screen in the city. Your career, your name, your so-called empire, gone." Wan Di didn't flinch. "Do it. Let them see how much you've lied, how much you've twisted." "I'm not afraid anymore." Yuqing's smile faltered. She wasn't used to her games falling flat. The largest of the men stepped forward. "You know, we always wondered if you were all talk." Another moved behind her. The trap wasn't blackmail, it was violence. "Strip her phone. Get everything off it. Make sure she doesn't walk out of here with anything." The first man lunged. Wan Di moved first. Her elbow cracked into his jaw, hard. He stumbled, groaning. She twisted and kicked the one behind her, then backed against the wall. She fought like someone who had been cornered before, but there were too many. A hand grabbed her wrist. Another yanked her hair back. She gasped, twisting, kicking, screaming, but the sound of struggle was swallowed by the woods. Then, just when one of them raised a fist, flashlights beamed through the trees. "Step away from her," Voices. More figures emerged from the shadows. Her assistant, some of the men loyal to Mr. Jiang, even Nanfeng Jin himself. The attackers froze. Yu King shouted, "She's bluffing! That's not the real Su Yi! She's a liar!" But no one listened. Not now. The thugs backed away, one by one. Someone called the police. Sirens began to rise in the distance. It should have been over. But one man, angry, desperate, humiliated, snatched a knife from his boot and lunged, not at Wan Dai, but at her assistant, who had stepped forward to help her. Wan Di saw the motion. She didn't think. She moved. She stepped in between. The blade caught her side, deep and fast. For a moment everything slowed. She gasped and collapsed. Blood bloomed across her coat. The men grabbed the attacker and pinned him to the ground. Yu King screamed, realizing the plan had failed and her leverage was gone. But none of that mattered. Wan Di lay in the dirt, her eyes fluttering, her breathing ragged. Sirens screeched closer. Someone pressed cloth to the wound. Another shouted for help. Her assistant gripped her hand, whispering her name again and again. In the hospital, while her heart beats weakly, a miracle call is made. The blood, the truth, the rise. The hospital was flooded with noise. Nurses moved in and out of the operating room. Monitors beeped steadily. Blood loss was severe. The surgeon's voice was sharp, urgent. "We need Rh negative. Fast." The blood bank was nearly empty. It was a rare type. Time was slipping away. Her assistant made the call. Nanfeng Jin had barely closed his eyes when his phone rang. One look at the name, and he was already out the door. He didn't ask questions. He didn't wait for a driver. He drove himself, headlights cutting through the night, hands clenched on the wheel. When he reached the hospital, he didn't walk. He ran. "I'll donate," he said before the nurse even finished the sentence. Minutes later, the blood transfusion began. Her vitals steadied. She would live. But while her body fought to recover, something else had already awakened. Su Yi stepped back into the light. She returned not as a victim, not as the girl who had been pushed, mocked, used, and thrown aside. She came back as a storm. The moment she was discharged, she walked into the boardroom of Jia Yuan Media. She didn't need an introduction. Behind her were documents, recordings, and eyewitness statements. Everything Wan Di had gathered before the fall. Mr. Zhu was the first to be summoned. He arrived smug, expecting silence. What he got instead was a formal complaint, served across the table. Sexual misconduct, abuse of authority, and intent to manipulate. Corporate contracts. He turned red, then pale, then quiet. Manager Ma followed. His crimes stretched wider: wage theft, intimidation, defamation, and conspiracy to falsify financial records. She laid out every deal he had made behind closed doors. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. He was fired by the end of the hour. One by one, the rot was cut away. Du Yu King and her attackers were already in police custody. The attempted assault, the ambush, the stabbing. Every charge was backed by evidence, witnesses, a full confession. She didn't press. The knife. She didn't need to. She had the law and something even more powerful, the public. People began to talk. They remembered her, the quiet girl, the one they called nothing. Now they saw her face in headlines. The Jiang Group released a statement confirming both sisters as rightful heirs. Photos of the reunion at the U hospital, a press conference held with Nanfeng Jin at her side. And in the middle of it all stood Su Yi and Wan Di, smiling faintly, one hand still wrapped in gauze. Two sisters. One story rewritten. The company was theirs now. Not as a gift, not through pity, because they earned it. Every scar, every step, But before the credits roll, one more surprise remained. One that changes everything. The mansion on the hill was older than it looked. Polished marble floors, crystal chandeliers, family portraits that watched over generations like silent guardians. But for years, it had felt hollow, until now. Su Yi stepped through the doors, hand in hand with Wan Di. Their grandmother sat in the center of the courtyard garden, wrapped in a silk shawl, tears already pooling before a word was said. "My girls," she whispered. "My heart." Wan Di knelt at her feet. Su Yi followed. "No more hiding," Su Yi said. "No more silence." They weren't just daughters of loss anymore. They were the living legacy of a bloodline nearly destroyed by greed, by fear, by betrayal. It was all by design. Years ago, the Jiang group faced a bitter succession war. Rivals inside and out plotted to erase the heirs. Wan Di was stolen from as a child. Su Yi was pushed to the side, unrecognized and unseen. It was supposed to end there, but it didn't, because some things cannot be erased. Blood remembers. The sisters moved back into their rightful place, not with entitlement, but with the calm confidence of those who'd built themselves from nothing. They restructured the company. They opened new ventures, community health initiatives, education programs for orphaned girls, employment programs for women rising from hardship. Their names were now spoken with pride, and one evening, under the dim lights of the family's private estate, Nanfeng Jian knelt. He didn't speak at first. He just opened a small velvet box. "I know you don't need anyone," he said. "That's why I'm asking." Su Yi smiled. She didn't cry, but her voice broke just enough to say yes. Wan Di looked on, arms crossed, hiding a grin. She had teased her sister for years, called her stubborn, too serious, too guarded. But now, watching her stand tall with someone who saw her worth, it all made sense. Later that week, the Jiang group held its annual summit. For the first time, both chairs were filled by two women, one with quiet strength, the other with fire. Together they built something unshakable. And when the cameras flashed and the crowd cheered, Su Yi stepped forward. Her voice, calm and certain, echoed across the hall. They bullied a girl who had no one, but they never knew. She had someone watching, a twin, a warrior, a legacy reborn. This was not the ending. It was the beginning, a new chapter, a new power. A family is finally whole. And now it's your turn. If this story touched your heart, hit like and subscribe, and comment below your favorite moment. Best comment will be pinned. Who knows, we might feature you next.